Hey there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name is Luke. Today we're going to talk about the bass guitar sound I use in a lot of my Berlin and Prog stuff. I've had a bunch of people actually say, hey, how do you get that bass sound? And I've just told them the simplest answer is I'm using a VST called Trillion, which is a bass centric VST from Spectrasonics. But I actually use a whole bunch of different soft synths to emulate bass guitar, and then I do a bunch of processing underneath, and I build up basically a system for doing the sort of prog bass sounds that I like to do. And I've been telling people, the easy answer is like, well, just go pick up Trillion. Then that'll do, right? If that's just all you want to know, I use Trillion. Go check it out. It's great. But if you want to know how I glue it all together, that's what this video is for. So we're just going to do a big breakdown of how I build my bass sounds, okay? So this is Synth Seeker. These are synth basses, but they are sampled and then layered synth basses. So if you like that bass sound that you heard at the beginning, I'm going to show you how I get that. All right. So let's sort of dig in. Now, the way I do bass, and I am a bass player. I've been playing bass for many years, although I do not currently own a bass guitar, and haven't since pre-pandemic, simply because I like this sound, and this gets it done for me. All right. And the way I work this out is into sort of three sections. I've got sound sources, so the actual bass guitar sounds that I'm using. I'll talk about a few different sample libraries that I'm using, a few different synths. And then there is some layering. I layer a particular synthesizer sound, and you can vary that. You can do whatever you want. We'll get to how we cook that. But it starts with sound sources, these bass sounds. It starts with, and then carries on to some synth sounds that get layered on top of that. And then there's a whole lot of processing. Well, maybe not a whole lot, but there is some processing that happens on there with effects and things. I'm going to break it into those three sections. So let's talk about the sound sources first, okay? All right. So let's just talk about sound sources, okay? So you can go get bass sample libraries. If I pull this up, what do we have here? This is Contact, right? Okay. So this is the Scarby J Bass sample library right, that you can get for Contact. Right, this is the Scarby J Bass, specifically the neck pickup. Okay, because if you ever saw one of these basses or you've seen a Rickenbacker, there's two pickups. There's a neck pickup and a bridge pickup. And the sound that I like, and the sound that I am trying to emulate, that sort of proggy Chris Squire sort of sound from old Yes albums, is that really the sound of that Rickenbacker neck pickup. It's really round. So this is an option you can choose. Okay, when it comes down to what the sort of root bass sound is, you can use whatever you want. Okay, I'm just going to show you three things that I use, and I swap them out. But any library you get is going to have dozens of variations, and you should play with them all, even things you don't like the sound of. When you go listen to the raw bass and you're like, nah, I don't really like that, deal with it, get it into this sort of harness that I'm going to show you here of effects and layers, and listen to it there, because we're going to change the sound pretty radically as we go through, right? So start with some bass. And bass sample libraries come in different flavors as far as how easy they are to use and how thorough they are on how many articulations they cover and how their scripting and programming handles things like I'm going to play an octave here, there, right? So both of those notes are ringing out. Right? And when I play them legato, I play this one, and then I play that one an octave up, they're both still ringing. Now, depending on how the library is scripted, you can have libraries that will choke notes. It'll mute notes as though you were playing on the same string, right? And you played it an octave up. This one is not doing that right now, right? And then based on velocity, that's low velocity. It's like a palm mute. And as I increase my velocity, it starts ringing out. And as I keep hitting that velocity, I get there's a little distortion in there. Is that might be my stuff clipping. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about that right now. But you can get more finger noise and things like that. All right, and so let's pull up one of the other ones. Another popular one, I like this library a lot, is the Shreddage 3 library for Contact for their Abyss bass, which covers a pretty broad range of basses. Right, this one's much more twangy, a lot more string fret buzz, more finger noise. Right, that is another flavor that you could be using. And then finally, the third example is this, actually, let me turn off the effects, there we go, is this Trillion library from Spectrasonics. That's their sort of retro 60s bass. This library comes with a bunch of stuff, like they didn't focus on a particular model of bass. They cover a lot of basses in their basses that they cover. That was stupid. Anyway, terrible joke. I'm sorry. But those are sort of the three sound sources. I do this Scarby. I do the shreddage. And then the Trillion stuff. Okay, so you take your sound source, and it can be whatever you want, and you can layer those. You want two of those tones laid on top of each other and sort of chorusing each other out. You can totally do that, okay? But the gist is you start with a sound source that is actually a sample of a bass guitar, okay? Because you need that sort of spectrum of intonation and inflection and finger noise and fret noise. You want all of those things. They add a lot, and we're actually going to bring those out, okay, as we keep going. So that's your sound source, okay? Now, layering. In almost all of my bass pieces, I layer the bass guitar sample with a Taurus pedal, okay? And in this case, I'm actually using the Trillion's library's preset called Foot Monster. Right? If you're not familiar with the Taurus pedals are a pedal bass synth made by Moog over the years. I don't think they make them anymore. So Taurus 1, Taurus 2, Taurus 3. You can still find them used. And they're basically two oscillator synths, and they were meant for the low end. If you ever seen like lots of prog players use them, Geddy Lee of Rush, right? He would play his bass guitar. He would have Taurus pedals on the floor and all sorts of stuff. But it has this distinctive sound, and what I'm specifically going for is a bass synth sound that is one octave below what the guitar is playing, okay? So in all of the stuff I'm doing, you're going to hear this bass synth playing an octave below. Now you could achieve the same effect by using like an octave down pedal, right? That works too. There's, you don't have to layer a bass synth in, but there is an octave sub basically happening there. And I've got it set so that it has a slow attack. It fades in. Because I want the bass guitar fret noise and the attack and the finger pluck to actually bite through and be what's the initial attack of the note. And I want the sub to swell up underneath it. So when I'm playing quick runs, you don't get much of that sub coming in, but when you hold a sustained note, that swell comes up and sort of envelops you. All right. And so what we do is we layer these. So if I go back to the Scarby, so we've got that initial attack. Okay, here it is with the shreddage. And then with some Trillion. All right. Now, one thing that's important, when you're doing this layered bass stuff, I generally force it to mono, not the bass guitar, but the sub. The sub bass is actually running through a utility plugin here that I'm forcing to just go mono. And yeah, you may get some phase cancellation depending on how you've got the synth set up. And you want to adjust so that you don't get that phase cancellation, unless that's a sound you're looking for. But if I'm going to be doing any effects, like delay that's going to, echo back and forth, you get a ping pong back and forth or something like that, I want the bass synth to at least start dead center and let the bass guitar sort of move around on the soundstage a bit more than that. Sort of keeps it grounded. But you could play with that. There's no rule. That's just what I'm doing. So basically, the sound, first two pieces of the puzzle are starting with a bass sampled synth and layering in an octave down something like a Taurus pedal, a swell, a bass swell, a subswell. Okay? And then what we do is, let me shut this down. We turn on, you may need to EQ it and may need to compress it a bit. Right? That's a pretty subtle, let's see, we'll A-B it for you. So here it is, the straight sample. And let me turn off the Taurus. So here's that. I'm going to EQ it a bit. And what I'm really doing is scooping the middle a little bit. So I'm carving out a little space for that bass to swell up into. All right. And then I just do a little compression on that to pull out the initial attack a bit more. All right. And then effects. So let me turn that swell back on. I'm just going to do this with the Scarby bass for now. So what am I doing? I may or may not use a channel EQ to, again, bump, as opposed to I was cutting the bass sample. And now I've got this EQ that's sort of in there, which I turn on or not based on whether I'm going to do some soloing. So if you're going to pull a bass solo out, you don't want that scoop there. You want to bring those mids back in. So I will alternatively turn this EQ on and off, depending on what I'm doing with the bass. And then I use a little chorus. And there is some delay back here. All right, that's just like a Roland Space Echo, clone. And then one important thing that I do is I do a little parallel processing. I use if this is an Ableton, you can do it however you want to do it. But I use an effects rack with two chains. One chain is empty, so you just get that straight signal as it is. And the other one just has a little pedal plugin set to distortion, which is like Proco Rat style distortion. And then the gain's up just enough to give it a little buzz, a little grit, 13%. And I bring that in depending on what I want. So if I were to mute that, what you're going to hear, here it is clean. Here it is with the distortion. And what I find is the distortion actually brings out the finger noise and the fret noise more than anything else, which I think goes a long way to making it sound good, for however you want to define good. Okay. So, but sometimes that distortion will kill the sort of the low end, the bass tone, right? Depending on what kind of distortion effect you're using. So I run it in parallel. I run a copy of clean and then a copy that I distort a bit, and then I mix them back together, and I vary the amount of distortion to like the feel of it. Okay. And that's really it. Okay. You can take a bass synth of some kind, sample library, Scarby, Shreddage, Trillion, something that you like to play. When you go to play it on your synth or on your grid, if you don't like the feel of it, because it's really subjective, different libraries have different amounts of scripting in their articulations. They've got a different amount of how much does the sound change as I use different velocities. So you find one that you can deal with. You don't have to like the sound, but you have to like the playability of it is sort of key. Okay. Then you take that sound. I EQ it slightly just to get it to where I want it. And with some libraries that are real quacky, that means I'm going to scoop the mids on that. I'm going to pull the mids down a bit, right? And then I may compress it, and I may I may disable that EQ or bump it back up if I'm going to do some soloing or something. You want something to bite through. But you take that bass sound, you parallel process it, have a clean channel, and then have a distorted channel, and you mix in how much distortion you want. Because sometimes I want it just completely clean, and sometimes I want it really fuzzy. All right, and then you can just crank that. And then I run it through a chorus and an echo. And you can vary how much chorus and how much echo, what kinds you want. All right, and basically I pull the whole thing into a single effects rack instead of being split out into channels for layer illustration. But I've basically got it in here, and I've got my macros assigned to the effects that I want to tweak or take snapshots of. So I've got sub level, how much distortion, how much delay, feedback, like how long do the echoes last, how much delay is actually there, wet, dry, channel mode for whether you want it to ping pong back and forth or not. How control on how whether bass mono is on or not, what the delay rate, gain, chorus level, stereo width, things like that. And then I just save them as snapshots. So I have a clean tone, right? It's got a little slapback delay, like little room ambience, but no sub in that, no distortion, no chorus. And then I've got a chorused version for that 80s tone. Right. I've got a version with a little bite. Right, that distortion really brings out the finger attack on those bass sounds, and it does it for all of them. It's really great. So you can pick which library you like the tone of, and then throw a little distortion on it to see how does it behave when you start distorting and get those attacks and finger squeals and string squeak. And then I've got bite with a little delay on it, getting spacier. Right, and that's got a wide sort of ping pong. Right, there's your Pink Floyd Run to the Hills kind of tone. And then I've got full sub, or not full, but I've got a lot of sub, a lot of distortion. Right, there's that sub. One final note, if you can manage it, if you can assign aftertouch to vibrato on just the bass sound, not the chorus sound, what'll happen is if you apply aftertouch after you play a note and press, your bass will start to, its pitch will start to waver from the vibrato, but the chorus sound, the synth underlaying that sub underneath isn't going to vibrato, and you're going to get another sort of modulation effect as that pitch phase cancels against the one that's not shifting. So you get this kind of tone. You hear that whoa, 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 whoa. That's that vibrato kicking in. Right. And that's a nice accent when you're playing. When you're out there and you're soloing, you want to hold it, and you want to add some mod, add something to that note. I prefer it up in the upper registers, but and really that's it. Okay, so get a bass sample, pick the library you like, Scarby, Shreddage, Trillion. Of all of them, I like Trillion the most. For me, it is the most playable, but it's also fairly expensive. So do what you can, and then take those bass samples, layer them with a Taurus pedal-like sound. So that's a deep sub bass that swells up, okay? Slow attack. So you get the clean sort of attack of the fingers on the bass and the fret noise and things like that. And that is your initial attack of the sound. And then this sub swells in. All right. And then process as needed. Chorus, a little EQ, tailor it to your mix. It's not, there's no simple answer there, but that is the core of how I do my bass sounds. All right. Sample into layered with a Taurus into effects. some distortion in there in parallel, right? So run a clean version and run a distorted version, and then mix between the two, because that distorted version is going to pull out the finger noise, the fret noise, the attacks, and really make it cut through and be that prog solo bass instrument that everyone really likes to play with. All right. And so there it is. Now, I have a little sort of cultural statement to make. I wrestled with this for maybe a week, whether I was like, do I want to show people my magic bass sound? Oh my God, then everyone will use it. And, honestly, I was walking the dog and I'm going, no, that's stupid. Right? There is no special sauce. People are like, here's the secret technique for the ultimate patch, or here's my special secret sound that only I have. Well, I'm just emulating a sound that existed like literally 60 years ago. It's like saying, oh yes, this is my special way to make a violin sound. Nobody's got it but me. It's like, yeah, this sound's been around forever. So what's the point in hiding it? So this is what I'm doing. This is how you build it. Go build yours. I tend to use Trillion and Shreddage and Scarby's J-Bass, and I like Trillion the most, okay? And then I take those, I add a Taurus pedal layer, I parallel process a little distortion in, I apply effects. There isn't a secret sauce for this, and it's not a zero-sum game. If you give your friend or even, some person who's you don't know, some stranger, the patch library for how you make your thing, and they take it, they're not going to make the same music as you. They're just not. And if they are, well, if your music's always the same, maybe it's time for you to evolve your sound a little bit. It's not that big a deal. So this is how you do it. And I hope to hear examples, I should say, of you using this sound or something like it, okay? I'd love to hear what sort of proggy Berlin bass you've got floating around in your, studio. Share it with me. And that's about it. So it is the 4th of July. My birthday was 2 days ago. I am older, but I hope all of you, if you're in the U.S., have a great holiday weekend. For everyone else, hope you have a great non-holiday weekend, or if it's a holiday in your country that I'm unaware of, put it in the comments. Tell me, yeah, we celebrate this around midsummer. Be curious to see what else people are doing. And I've got some friends in Australia too, and it's definitely not midsummer there right now. So, hey, thanks for watching. And as always, this has been Synth Seeker. Have a great day.